Hey everybody, welcome to Project Knife Hand. My name is James. Today we're going to talk about the Haven XL. The Haven XL is a lay flat hammock system that can also be used as a bivvy on the ground. It's extremely versatile and I chose it for that reason. Some folks have had some negative comments to say about its weight and its lack of usability for backpacking because it is a bit heavier, but there are some points that I wanted to share with you today and help you make that decision. First of all, what is the Haven good at? I don't believe the Haven to be a lightweight backpacking shelter. If you're putting in all kinds of miles and you're running the AT, you're not going to bring the Haven system with you on an extended through hike. That's just not what it's good for, in my opinion. The folks at Haven, they do say that it is for backpacking and it can be used for backpacking, and I do believe it can. In my experience, it would be for shorter trips, but also if you did a couple of things that reduce the weight, which we'll talk about here in a minute. What the Haven does excel at is being extremely versatile and simple to set up. That's why I like it, and that's why I would highly suggest folks give it a shot. I do a lot of canoe camping, a lot of backpacking, a lot of different things. I truck camp, kayak camp, motorcycle camp even, although my last trip didn't end so well. I select the Haven more often than my other shelters at this point, which includes some pretty high-end hammock systems and also tent systems to include the Durston X Mid, to include Warbonnet hammock systems. I've invested a lot of money in several different shelters, and I really like this setup because it's just so easy to use, and I can use it in multiple situations. I can take one shelter with me, whether I'm canoe camping, truck camping, or whatever. I can hang it in the trees, or I can pitch it on the ground in a bivvy style. That's worth a whole lot to me. It is a bit heavy, which is often talked about, but like I said, we're going to go ahead and talk about ways you can bring that weight down a little bit here in a minute. The first thing we'll do is a pretty quick component breakdown, and I'll just show you folks the shelter. Okay? Inside of this package, I have the Haven XL system. So we've got the sleeping pad, and here is the hammock and the tarp. Inside of this bag, I also have the Works Bundle accessory kit, which I would highly suggest you get, and we'll talk about why here in a minute. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to unclip this. It's a pretty neat way to condense the shelter items and components. So here is the sleeping pad, which is an integral part of the shelter system, and this shelter bag, the sleeping mat bag also doubles as a pump sack, which is a pretty great idea. The next thing we're going to do is crack open the main bag here. You've got two aluminum spreader bars. This is the bag that would normally hold the bars and also the rainfly, but I've condensed that down into the one bag here. And I just use this bag for my hardware, my hanging hardware, and my stakes. So we've got the stakes, we've got our tree straps, we've got our whoopee slings. The whoopee slings are part of the Works accessory bundle, which is one of the things that I think is great about it. And then we've got our guy lines. Here is the power pump, which is part of the Works bundle as well. Another component that I would highly suggest you get. And the remaining part is just the shelter and the rainfly. So let's go ahead and set that up. My goal here is to provide a review that folks will find helpful. But also it's from experience of using the Haven hammock system in multiple environments. I've used it in the desert as a bivvy, I've used it in the trees as a hammock system, I've used it in hot weather, and I've used it in cold weather below freezing. That being said, let's go ahead and get the tree straps and set up the first component. It takes a matter of seconds to set up the tree straps. What I find with these type of tree straps with the loops, that the distance often has to be perfect in order for these to work well. You only have a certain amount of increments to adjust the hang. So on spans that are greater than X amount of feet, sometimes the whoopee slings come in handy. Generally, I find when I hang the Haven system, I end up having to use one whoopee sling because the increments on the tree straps, they don't quite work out sometimes with larger spans. So I will generally put the tree straps on, clip on one of the whoopies, and then start to hang the hammock. I personally prefer to leave the fly attached to the hammock body. It makes setup and breakdown a lot easier, and I think that's one of the strong points of the Haven system. So I pack the foot end first because it does have a head end and it does have a foot end, at least on the XL system, and I'll show you what that is here in a second. So I just grab the carabiner that's attached to the head end and clip it on the whoopie loop. And then we're going to pull it out and tag on the tail end on the other side. Alright, so we have our tree straps on, we hooked our whoopie sling on one side, and then we hooked the head end to that and the tail end to the tree strap on the tree. You could set this up many different ways. I've just found this to be very easy and often don't need two whoopie slings unless I'm spanning a pretty far gap. In most cases, two tree straps and then one whoopie sling does the job. So I've done that. I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments now. Just grab our one whoopie sling, pull her tight, and she's ready to finish. Let's go ahead and take the tarp, throw it over the other side. This is the head end I was talking about. You see this strap here, this is so you can pull it tight and adjust the tension and actually use it as a recliner when you're just relaxing and hanging around camp. Stuck in the hammock on a rainy day, it comes in handy. It also is a pretty clever way to adjust the head end. If for some reason you pitch this without the head end being a little bit higher, you can use this to sort of adjust it a little bit. That's not its intended purpose, but I find it a pretty nice secondary purpose. So now that we're set up and we adjusted the hang, let's open her up and put our bed in. Now that you've got the hammock set up and the lay adjusted, it's time to put in your spreader bars. They're a two-piece aluminum design, and right inside the hammock you can see these little tabs. Just go ahead and open that little tab up, put the bar on one side and put the bar in the other side, and then we just repeat it on the other side. Here's the Haven XL pad. This is a very important part of the shelter because it provides a little bit of structure. The R value on this pad is 3, so not exactly a winter pad, but it'll get you through the spring, definitely in the summer, and slightly into the fall. I've had the Haven standard XL pad down below freezing, and it was a little bit of a chilly night with an R value of 3, but it was possible. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and get this Haven XL pad blown up. It is quite a large pad, so I find it easier to do outside, but you could do it inside the hammock if you wanted to. This is the power pump that comes with the Works bundle. I highly suggest you get this because it's such a large pad. It also doubles as a battery bank, which will come in handy with one of the other accessories that I'm going to show you here in a second. The important part of this shelter system is this mattress. It's important that it's fully inflated. Once you get to the maximum pumping pressure, it's good to put a couple breaths of your own in to make sure that it's pretty firm. This is actually the head end of the pad, but I always put it at the foot end so that I don't rub onto the valve when I'm sleeping. One of the things you want to be sure of is that the mattress is tucked into these little green pockets on each corner. That helps with the structure of this hammock and provides some stability. Another important part of the Works bundle is this LED light strip, and it's a really clever design. It's got a carabiner or a loop on one side, and it comes with these little silicone toggles to run this thing across your integrated ridge line and into the other pocket. I think it's a super cool feature. I've used it a number of times now. So I run it along my ridge line, and on the other end you have a USB connection, which you can use your power pump to power. So you plug the LED ridge light into your power pump, drop that into one of the 6 storage pockets, and now you have a dimmable LED light strip. It's hard to see right now because it's broad daylight, but if you tap it once it comes on, if you press and hold, it gets dimmer and or brighter. It's at its brightest point now. Hopefully you can see that, but I'll put some night pictures up for you right here. So here's a look inside. We've got a pocket here, large pocket here, large pocket there, and same on the other side. The bars have come in handy, as well as this integrated ridge line with this super long bed has been great for hanging gear. Having the ridge light is fantastic, and the dimmable switch, I'm a really big fan of it. As I said, this is the head end, so you just reach above you, dim the lights, turn them off, whatever suits you. This strap here, I'll show you how to use that in just a moment. One thing I find pretty helpful is keeping both of the zippers where you can reach them. If you leave one of the zippers up at the top, it sometimes can put a lot of pressure on that zipper, and then you can't operate it from inside the hammock. So I try to keep them both in a range where I can operate them from inside the hammock. Now I want to show you how that strap works. First thing you want to do is unzip your bug net so that you can get in the hammock. You can take this strap and you can pull it tight. Get in your shelter. So now our head end is inclined and makes it a little bit more comfortable. You could do it further to sit up a little bit more, but I find this is pretty comfy. If you want to lower it, you can do so from inside the tent. Simply find that buckle and let her down to lay flat. I quickly want to talk to you about the tarp that comes with the Haven. You can choose colors, but most importantly, the toggle system is pretty genius. So I want to show you how to use that before we get into specifics about the materials. On both sides, you can just toss the tarp over and toggle it. This is why you don't need to guy it out if you don't want to, and why I say you can have a complete setup without even really dealing with your fly. Because now it's in storm mode and each end is toggled down on both sides. So basically what we have here is a bivvy that's hanging off the ground. If you want to guy it out, it's quite simple. You take your toggles off. There's also one in the middle for additional security. You take your toggles off. And you run out your guy lines. These are the aluminum stakes that are included. You get 4 of these and your pretty standard guy line. I just make sure I have a loop tied on one side so that I can hook it to the shot cord loops on the tarp, and then I guy it out using a trucker's hitch. The reason why I guy out my tarp using a hitch in this way is because I often find that once you lie in the hammock, the tension on these changes, and so I like to be able to get out and adjust it if need be. So I just loop it on to the shot cord, and then I go ahead and guy out the tarp using a pretty quick trucker's hitch. It's also important to note that on each end of the hammock there are these 2 large vents that you could even use a USB fan in for airflow, but they also aid and reducing condensation. Many times this is how I set up the Haven. I guy out one side of the tarp so I have this space underneath, but I leave the other side toggled. Provides a little bit of privacy, but if you want the added space, as I said, you just undo your toggles and guy out this side as well as the other. Now that I've shared some thoughts on the Haven XL system, showed you how to set it up, and talked about it a little bit, we'll go into some specifics about the weight reduction stuff that we talked about. First and foremost, two components of this system are pretty heavy. The aluminum spreader bars are a bit heavy, and Haven has answered that call with carbon bars, which can be added when you order the shelter setup. I initially got this set up from Haven with the aluminum spreader bars and the standard tarp and the standard sleeping pad. And because I like this system so much, I went back and purchased the carbon spreader bars myself, which cut the weight down of the bars in half. I believe the aluminum bars are a little over 9 ounces for both of them. The carbon spreader bars cut that down to, I think, 4.5 or 5 ounces. So you can save 5 or 6 ounces, closer to 5 ounces, by adding the carbon spreader bars, which I would suggest you do. The other thing that you can do is purchase, or during your initial purchase, select the True Level sleeping pad, which reduces the weight further by about the same amount, I believe, and also increases the warmth. It takes the pad from a R value of 3 to a 4.7, which is a good bit warmer. So it's lighter, warmer, and you've cut weight in 2 spots. When thinking about the Haven as a shelter, as a go-to shelter, you know, a lot of folks that have had negative things to say about it, specifically channels on YouTube that don't do a whole lot of outings, they simply review gear, you know, have said, it's a bit gimmicky, it's too heavy, I've got 2-person tents lighter than that. Well, yeah, it's not the same thing. It's kind of apples and oranges, right? We talked about its strong points and the weaknesses. The weight of most tents, well, of any tent really, doesn't contain your sleeping pad, right? So Haven lists the lightest possible kit for this setup as 6 pounds, I believe, just over 6 pounds, right? So if you compare 6-pound shelters, the ones that I have that most closely resemble that weight are, like, say, a 2-person Kelty, which is considered a backpacking tent, but it's on the heavier side at about 5 pounds and 14 ounces, I think. So it's danger close to a 6-pound tent. When you consider most beginner tents, most beginner backpacking tents, 4 or 5 pounds, they're pretty close when you add the weight of the sleeping pad. So when you consider the Haven containing that pad within that weight, as well as a tarp, I just think it's a lot closer than folks give it credit for. So you've got your tent and you've got your fly. Hopefully, if you're in the beginner or intermediate range of camping and adventuring, you're probably around 5 or 6 pounds for your tent, including a sleeping pad. That doesn't include your sleep system or even like a common area tarp. As far as I'm concerned, tarps are a must-have to give you that outside space, to pack up gear and all that sort of stuff. So with the Haven system, you get that. It's infinitely more comfortable than sleeping on the ground. If you need to take it to the ground to do so because you don't have any trees, you can do that. But you get a better night's sleep. That's what I like about it. Sleep, versatility, it's been dependable, and its ease of setup. A bit earlier I stated that the lightest kit weight for the Haven XL was about 6 pounds. That's for the standard Haven. The lightest kit weight with those upgrades for the Haven XL is 7 pounds. So as this shelter sits right now, it's a little bit over 7 pounds. 7 pounds, I think 11 ounces, because I don't have any of those upgrades, but they're on their way here, which I purchased in addition to this, like I said, because I'm pretty excited about this shelter and I'm quite happy with it. The max capacity of the Haven XL is 285 pounds. I fall well within that. Let's talk about the length of the pad. This pad is 80 inches long and 30 inches wide. So when considering the weight, you have to consider that not only is it a little bit more roomy and you get that outside space, but you have a little bit more room to move around and there's the added comfort. The standard Haven XL pad is a 40 denier ripstop nylon, so it's pretty tough. So when you take this thing to the ground, You don't really have to worry about popping a hole in the sleeping pad, which is something I was concerned with because I was worried I'd wear through the tent body and then it would cause issues with my sleeping pad, but that's not likely. If you purchase the upgraded pad, it's a 30 denier brush polyester, so it's a little bit thinner but still quite durable. They save a little bit of weight that way, but it also has that higher R value and a bit of weight savings. Tent/hammock body itself has a 4,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating when it comes to waterproofing. So both the tent body and the Rainfly are super waterproof and durable. The standard Rainfly weighs 13.4 ounces and it's a 20 denier ripstop nylon. It also has a 4,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating. So as I said, the system as a whole is quite waterproof and quite durable, which is one of the reasons why it's a little bit heavy. So at the end of the day, my thoughts on the Haven system. That's what everybody's been waiting for. It is a bit heavy, even with the upgrades which you can purchase, which I have. I think that it's worth consideration, even for backpacking. Okay, now if you're doing some backpacking, me personally, I'm not a strong backpacker, so I would probably prefer a lighter shelter. That being said, when it comes to any sort of adventure where I'm not portaging my canoe long distance or hiking, 15-16 miles, the Haven has been my shelter of choice. It's extremely waterproof. It's extremely easy to set up. I can set up in multiple places in multiple ways. I've used it with trekking poles. I've tied it to picnic tables. I've used other tarps to increase my space and reduce weight. There's just so much you can do with it. I don't really think you can go wrong. The one downside, and the only downside I have personally experienced, is it being a little bit chunky weight-wise. That being said, I would like for folks to take that into consideration and consider the Haven for a go-to shelter. It's become one of mine. Now, the accessories bundle, which came with it, which I got with it, I've been also extremely helpful. Blowing up this big mattress is a little tricky by mouth, or even with the pump sack, although the fact that it is a pump sack is pretty cool. So go ahead and consider the Haven shelter. I can't imagine you'd be disappointed if you're under the weight limit. If you find it easier to set up like I do, I think you'd be extremely happy about it. One of the things that is special about this system, if you find sleeping on the ground uncomfortable, but you also have difficulty setting up hammocks, in my opinion, it's far easier to set up than a standard hammock system. You've got to get the lay right. If you don't, it could be a little bit of an issue. The Haven sort of eliminates a lot of that. It's much easier to set this up and adjust it, I find, than our standard hammock system. For beginners, that is. So I know I'll probably get a lot of comments or flack because experienced hammock campers strongly prefer, their systems, and I'm not against that. Like I said, I have my war bonnet setups and multiple other hammocks, Sea to Summit as well, but I do find this old gal much easier to set up. I plan to use this often on future adventures. I plan to have the upgrades installed in the next video to show you folks that. I've also got some ideas on how to reduce the weight further and increase the space further. So if you're interested in that, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel and set that notification bell to all. If you're interested in a Haven system, based on my opinion, below in the description there will be an affiliate link. If you purchase the Haven system using that link, it will help support the channel. But I will say, like many other YouTubers, my passion is for providing correct information, which is why I don't do gear videos often. You mostly just see my adventures, my paddles, truck camping, and a little bit of backpacking. You don't see me suggest gear very often. So take that for what it's worth. I think that the Haven system is worth your money, and I think you can trust it. So go ahead and click that link and grab one today. Otherwise, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you soon.